Hey guys, Sean here, welcome to the F1 Word and to my Spanish Grand Prix review. Now, after thrilling races in Bahrain, China and Baku, it was pretty much back down to earth with a bump yesterday in Spain, although to be fair, it wasn't the worst Spanish Grand Prix I've seen over the years, and it did offer up a few talking points which we will get to in just a moment, but first off, we'll take a look at the race winner, and this time round it was Lewis Hamilton for Mercedes. A dominant drive from the world champion, pretty much pole to flag. One-stop strategy, and his best lap was a 1:19.133, as you can see there. Whether you love him or you hate him, there's no denying that he was back in his groove and back to his best this last weekend. But let's not forget, as I'm going to talk about a little bit later on, this is a Mercedes track, and they were always going to go well. And that was confirmed as we look at the rest of the race result. Valtteri Bottas over 20 seconds behind his teammate. To be fair to him, I think he would have been closer had he not been jumped by Sebastian Vettel early on. But that is still a big margin. Max Verstappen, great drive from him, third place. Sebastian Vettel will be disappointed with fourth place. We'll talk about him in just a moment. Daniel Ricciardo, an odd one from him. Was clearly quick, actually set the fastest lap of the race as well. But a spin under the virtual safety car makes him look a lot more off the pace than he actually was. Kevin Magnussen once again showing what he can do when he stays out of trouble. Brilliant drive in sixth place, never troubled from anyone behind, but at the same time, to be fair, nowhere near the top five. Great points for Haas though. Carlos Sainz finishes in seventh place ahead of Fernando Alonso. Both Spanish drivers in the points, so the locals will have been thrilled with that one. Sergio Perez picking up a couple of points for Force India, and Charles Leclerc once again picking up points for Sauber in 10th place. And that is the first time that Sauber have scored back-to-back points since Felipe Nasr in 2015. Lance Stroll finished 11th for Williams. Not a great weekend for them. They definitely look well off the pace. And okay, there was a lot of luck involved, but he does deserve some credit for getting that car to 11th. A great first lap from Stroll. Even if you take out the retirements from the first lap crash, he still gained 3 or 4 places. Brendan Hartley came home 12th for Toro Rosso, cruised across the line actually, and pulled up at the end of the pit lane. Clearly some kind of mechanical issue there. Marcus Ericsson in P13 for Sauber, and Sergei Sirotkin was the last of the classified finishers in 14th. And your retirements list, again, quite a long one. Van Dorn, Ocon, Raikkonen, Grosjean, Gasly and Hülkenberg. And that is going to be our first talking point. So Romain Grosjean caused an accident up at turn 3 on the first lap. If you haven't seen the incident, I will give you a quick description of it, but I will also pop a link to it in the description as well. Essentially, Grosjean comes around turn 3. Kevin Magnussen just in front of him has a little loss of control of his Haas. Grosjean tries to avoid, then loses control of his car. That sends him into a spin, and he lights up the rear tyres, which sends the car back across the racetrack. And Nico Hülkenberg and Pierre Gasly could do absolutely nothing and just ploughed into him. I came to a conclusion, having watched it at the time and have watched it a few more times this morning. My opinion hasn't changed. Grosjean 100% to blame. Yes, okay, he's going to avoid Magnussen, but he's lost control of his car at the end of the day. But the bit that gets me more than anything is why light up his rear tyres? Why has he gone and done that? There's only one thing that's going to happen in that situation. As soon as he floors the throttle, that car is always going to go back across the track. If he hadn't hit the throttle, based on all the replays I've seen, the onboard, the offboard, if he doesn't hit the throttle, that car continues to spin into the runoff area. Yes, okay, we can throw some defence and say it's a split-second decision. You don't know how you're going to react in that situation. Other drivers have done it in the past, but that doesn't excuse him. And he is very lucky that more drivers weren't collected and it wasn't more serious. You look at that inside wall on turn 3. The marshals that are stood there are not particularly well protected from any flying debris. That could have been very nasty indeed. The stewards gave him a 3-place grid penalty and 2 points on his super licence. Frankly, not enough. For me, that warrants at least a 5-place penalty, but I'd have given him a 10-place grid penalty. There are quite a few people calling for him to get a race ban for that incident. I think that would be incredibly harsh. If he goes off and does that again in a couple of Grand Prix time, then absolutely throw a race ban at him. But although he did lose control of the car by himself in Baku, that's the first time it's resulted in multiple cars being taken out. So I think to ban him for a race now would be incredibly harsh. Mercedes then, and it was a dominant 1-2 win for the Silver Arrows in the race, but this season is not over by a long way. Some people saying we may as well give them the title now. Since the turn of the hybrid era in 2014, the track in Barcelona has been a Mercedes track and they have often dominated there. So I genuinely do not believe that we can read too much into the result. It's a fairly unique track as well for modern day F1 when you look at the calendar. It's kind of made up of circuits like China and Bahrain. tracks designed by Herman Tilke, if you like, specific for Formula One. So I feel like they are going to be a more accurate reflection of the running order that we have. There is some talk of a Pirelli conspiracy that has favoured Mercedes. Now, for those who don't know, Pirelli reduced the amount of tread on the tyre compounds for the Spanish Grand Prix, and that is also going to be the case for the French Grand Prix and the British Grand Prix. Pirelli are saying they took that decision independently, although people are saying that it was at the request of Mercedes, who suffered blistering in pre-season testing in Barcelona. I get what people are saying, it's human nature to be sceptical over things like that, but I don't think there is any conspiracy there at all. But at the same time, I also don't believe it was an independent decision from Pirelli. It also wasn't only Mercedes who suffered with blistering during testing. Red Bull and other teams also had their tyre issues. So my honest feeling is that this was a request made by multiple teams to Pirelli. However, either way, quite frankly, I don't think it's right that tyres are changed mid-season. Pirelli should turn up at the start of the season with the tyre compounds for the year, and if a team has an issue, tough. It should be up to them to solve it and make the car and the tyres work together, not the tyre manufacturer having to change tyres to suit certain cars. But as I say, that's just my take on it all. Let me know what you think about this Pirelli conspiracy in the comments section down below. Something else from the race that has got people talking is the Ferrari strategy for Sebastian Vettel. Some saying that once again, Ferrari have messed it up. Obviously, Sebastian Vettel made a second stop during the race versus the one-stop strategy of those around him. And on the face of it, it does look like a mistake from Ferrari. However, when you go back over the numbers and look at all the information, as well as listening to what Vettel said after the Grand Prix, the Scuderia were pretty much between a rock and a hard place. Vettel said after the race that they would have had to make a second stop either way because they were struggling to manage the tyres, which is unusual because that's actually been a strong point for Ferrari over the course of this season and for much of last year as well. So if they had to make a second stop, it made sense that they went for it under the virtual safety car because, of course, that should, in theory, cost them less time than at full racing speed. What also didn't help the situation for them was that they had a slow stop, and that resulted in Sebastian Vettel rejoining behind Max Verstappen. However, many are questioning why Ferrari didn't move to the softer and therefore faster compound of tyre. Initially, I would agree that that seems like an error. But again, when you look at it, he did only manage 16 laps from the start of the race before he had to pit to change tyres. And if you throw on the laps during qualifying, those tyres have done a total of 19 laps. So with 25 laps left after his second stop, there were clearly concerns that they wouldn't be able to get those tyres to the end. Because again, with the laps put on those in Q3, that would be a total of 28. Now, of course, fuel would have been lower, so degradation would also have been lower. But in Ferrari's defence, if there is doubt that they're going to get those tyres to the end, is it really worth the risk of either the tyres falling off the cliff or a puncture, which of course could end your race or see you finish even further down the order? Frankly, it was a pretty miserable race for Ferrari anyway. Kimi Rikknen retired on lap 25, stating a loss of power over team radio. On the face of it, his second engine issue of the weekend following his problems in practice, so it looks almost certain that the Finn will take a penalty at some point this season, and we are only 5 races in. Before I get to my driver of the day, I'm just going to go over a few other incidents from the race. Esteban Ocon pulled over with smoke coming from the back of his Force India on lap 40. That obviously forced him into retirement, did bring out the virtual safety car. It was a shame because he was looking good to that point. He'd been running as high as 7th through the pit stops, but then it all began to unravel when he made his stop. It was a 20-second stop because the team struggled to get the rear tyre on the car, and then he pulled over on track shortly after with an oil pressure problem. Max Verstappen deserves a lot of credit for his drive this weekend. However, he did have contact once again in the race, although this one, for me, absolutely nothing in it. Under the virtual safety car restart, Max Verstappen hit the back of Lance Stroll, and that damaged the Red Bull's front wing end plate. Max Verstappen accelerates just as Stroll slowing down. It's a little bit of contact. The Red Bull driver came off worse. Lance Stroll was able to continue. And to be perfectly honest, that's it. And Stoffel Vandoorne retired on lap 47 after losing drive on the pit straight. The McLaren driver also receiving a time penalty for leaving the track and failing to return to the left of the bollard at the entry to turn 3. So my driver of the day then, now officially it was Lewis Hamilton, but I'm going to give it to Carlos Sainz. It was a drive that pretty much slid under the radar, not a lot of people talking about his performance. A very solid drive from the Spaniard. He finished ahead of the other home hero in Fernando Alonso and picked up some very important points for Renault, as we're going to see in just a moment. He, Verstappen, Magnussen and Leclerc all deserve a lot of credit for their drive on Sunday. Before I go then, let's have a look at the top 10 in the Drivers' Championship, and Lewis Hamilton takes a 17-point lead over Sebastian Vettel to Monaco. Valtteri Bottas moves to third place on 58 points. Kimi Rikknen falling a little bit adrift now in fourth. Daniel Ricciardo remains in fifth place. Big points for Max Verstappen see him leap to sixth. Fernando Alonso remains best of the rest in seventh place, with Nico Hülkenberg 10 points further back in eighth. Kevin Magnussen sits in ninth with 19 points, and Carlos Sainz also has 19 points. He sits 10th. In the Constructors' Championship, Ferrari and Mercedes again swap places, with the Silver Arrows taking the lead in the championship. Red Bull closed the gap a little bit on Ferrari after a good haul of points this weekend. Just think where they could be without the mechanical issues or the incidents on track we've seen. Renault jumped just ahead of McLaren by 1 point. That is going to be one hell of a fight this season for fourth place. Haas moved back up to 6th place. Force India are in 7th. Toro Rosso are in 8th place, still 13 points on the board. Sauber, 11 points already. They are in 9th. And Williams stay bottom on 4 points. So what do you think of the Spanish Grand Prix? Did you find it a little bit boring, or did you actually quite enjoy it? And also, who is your driver of the day? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. I will be back tomorrow with another video, of course, but in the meantime, you can follow me on social media. Links to Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and to Discord are all in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.